Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marie Palacios here with Funding for Good. And today we just want to tackle a quick topic, succession planning with file sharing. So this is particularly relevant right now as I am sitting here in social distancing mode in my home office. Mandy and I have been working remotely. And while we teach this concept throughout the year, we talk to organizations at our small business center presentations. When we're working with clients, we discuss this topic. But it just seemed especially relevant today as we all deal with COVID-19. But whether we are past the pandemic or you're in the middle of it when you watch this, I would encourage you to take the tips and tools we're sharing and think about succession planning and how file sharing might play an important role in preserving your organization's information. So we're going to jump in, and if at any point after you've watched this webinar and you've decided you may have some questions, then feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or some other modes and share your tips and tools as well. Okay, so we're going to jump in. So first of all, why is file sharing important? I think most of us have the common sense in our brain saying, well, of course, everyone should know where tools and information are. Well, that is absolutely true, but 99% of the organizations that we work with, when we walk in and say, okay, where is your tax exempt letter? Where is this grant document? Where is this document? Different members of the staff have access to those, and they can tell you exactly where they are, but not everyone has access to everyone else's information, nor should they. But there are certain documents and things that should be on a file sharing system to make the world run more smoothly in your nonprofit, especially in the case of a transition. So one of the key reasons to have an effective file sharing system, not just a file sharing system, but an effective one, is it keeps your team on the same page. You're working from the same documents. You're not looking back at old messaging, old versions of documents. You're on the same page. So that is just so much easier to do when you can jump on a live document and say, oh, this person just made these updates. Let me continue to work from here. It also supports seamless transitions between different staff members. If you have an executive director leaving, a program staff member transitioning out, this is a really helpful way to make sure that their information is preserved for their successor. And it's just, it just makes sense to have documents in one place, because no matter how many thumb drives, USB drives, or laptops you have around the office, those things end up kind of collecting dust until a successor comes in. And then by the time they do get those documents, many of them are outdated and they spend hours going through it. I'm speaking from experience here. I have jumped into several jobs where the only thing I was given was an outdated thumb drive, and many of the documents or the policies and procedures were no longer valid. And I didn't know that. So having a shared file system would have been very helpful in those transitions that I experienced, and I feel the same will be true for you. Finally, it saves time. If you are kind of in the mindset of, oh, let me email my coworker, my colleague, my board member this draft and have them make edits and then return it to me and go back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes it's those email threads, especially when they're threaded together, get really difficult to find. Just this week I was working on a project where someone sent me something by email and followed up, and the thread got so convoluted in my inbox that I wasn't even sure how to find the document I was looking for. So it really saves time to be able to jump into a system that you know exactly where the documents are. You can see who updated it and at what time, so you know that you're working with the most recent documents. So 3 really great sellers for why you should have an effective file sharing system if you do not. And then a few quick tips once you decide that you're going to move in this direction. So I'm going to put a few things out there first today. One, there are lots of file sharing systems, and I'm not creating a list for you of those today, but there's Google File Share, there's Google Drive, there's Dropbox, there's just a million different tools out there. And if you Google file sharing, free file sharing systems, you're sure to find lots of results on that. So I encourage you, whether you're using an in-house system or you decide to use something like Google Drive or Dropbox or something else out there on the market, that you do your homework, see that the system is user-friendly, make sure it meets your needs, and then use it effectively, because just having it there and collecting dust or growing arms and legs as people continue to add files without an organization process isn't helpful at all. So some of the ways to avoid those files growing arms and legs, and I say that because maybe I start a file and I name it one thing, and then my colleague has a different way of categorizing things. So maybe I put things by vendors, and I'd label the folder vendors or maintenance vendors. And one of my colleagues decides to put things in alphabetical order and put the name of a vendor like Dobson or Toshiba or something like that, the information exists in two different places, but they're not streamlined. So it's really hard for someone that doesn't know what they're looking for to find that information. So it's really important that you establish a principal administrator for your shared file system. Sorry about that, getting a little tongue-tied today. This could be your executive director, a program director. It could be, someone else on your staff, but I would definitely advocate for you having two of those, because if something happens to one, then that can be a very difficult situation. It's also helpful if the administrator creates, if you're going to, let's just use Dropbox as an example, since Mandy and I use that regularly for Funding for Good's business operations. It's great if you can have that account set up with a generic account or an account that someone else has access to. So instead of me using my personal account that Mandy has no access to, we have one, a work account that Mandy can then go in and she can receive my emails, see my emails, get my verification codes if needed if I'm not around. So we used an accessible email account to create that Dropbox. And if you do that as well, if all of a sudden you have to step back, you're not going to be getting those notifications. Whoever takes control of that, that general or that organizational email account will be able to do that. So I encourage you to have that. Establish your principal administrator, make sure that they set up the system with an email account. It might not even be your full organizations. And the reason I say this is, you may not want someone jumping into your executive director's email. This might just be an email that you create for file sharing or for, account information. It might be a catch-all. So it might just be, file sharing at organization or, communications at your organization, whatever it might be. Make sure that you have the password and the login information available to whoever's going to be administrator. So you set up this new file sharing system, and then you need to determine which files should be shared. So this is really important as well, because you don't need to save everything under the sun. Some of your program workers are going to be working on things and you're just going to be saying, okay, what is it? What needs to be saved? I would encourage you to sit down and say, what are the things that your staff are working on that if they were to walk away for a week or a month or forever, that you would need to have access to? So if they're creating, an event flyer for the large organizational event coming up, absolutely save it under your event folder or your marketing. But if it's something that they're working on that will not happen if they're not around, maybe it's a program they're designing or a special class that they are designing, but it's not going to happen if they're not around, you don't necessarily need those on your file sharing system. It depends on how much or how little you want to put on your system. You can get a lot of information on the free file sharing systems, but you can also upgrade to a professional suite and pay a little bit of money to get more storage space. That's a way to do it as well. But determine what you want. You want some administrative things, you want some program things, you want some marketing things, you want some board development documents or board organization documents, whatever that looks like for you. Organize your folders. I cannot stress this enough. Mandy and I have gone through several years of working together, and we finally have this system down. But I used to save things and say, oh, this makes sense under this. And she would save things and say, oh, this makes sense under this. And we had to really come together and say, what is our filing system? Everyone files things differently. So how are you going to do it? If you are going to do it by program, then you might have a mandate, and it could be a one-page abstract that you send out to anyone who's going to be using the file sharing system as administrator. You may have your main administrator, but then you may have some other people using it who have the authorization to edit files and make changes to the files. You want to make sure they're setting them up the same way. So you might have general program documents, and then you might have folders by year. You may say, let's break this down and do documents from 2020, 2019, 2018, or you may have them broken down by events or special projects and then go from there and say special events 2019, 2018, 2017. So you figure out what works for you on that. And that's really important to have a conversation with your staff. Once you determine what that system is going to be, put it in that little cheat sheet on how the system works. So I really encourage you as an administrator to have a cheat sheet. What's the file sharing system? What's the administration login, password information? Who has access to what folders? What should be saved and how often it should be saved and cleaned out? Then you have the opportunity to share information or share folders with specific individuals. So for example, you may have an entire folder dedicated to board documents, governance documents. It might be job descriptions for board members. It might be, bylaws. It might be many number of things, policies and procedures, anything like that. It might be some of the finances, anything like that. you would need to grant access to those individuals. So you can create a group of board members, and as board members come on, you add them into that group, and as they rotate off, you take them off. You can grant access for people to simply view documents, or you can grant access for them to be able to edit. If they are files that you do not want someone to accidentally delete, you would probably just want to give them access to view the files. But certain individuals, if they are working on your messaging or updating things, would need authorization to edit as well. So keep that in mind. And then what backup systems are you going to put into place? I know in Dropbox, before I delete anything, it says, are you sure you want to delete this everywhere for everyone? And it's nice to have that pop up on the screen, because I know, ooh, I almost made a mistake there. But what happens if, you know, something happens and someone does delete things? You know, you may be using Carbonite or something on your computer to back up files. You might have a hard drive that you transfer things to. Just determine if you're going to back something up. This is pretty secure in the cloud, but you know, you can never have too many copies. What does that backup system look like for your organization? I'm going to run you over and just give you a little tutorial. And just to put this out there, Mandy and I do use Dropbox, as I mentioned, and that's why I'm sharing this with you today. There are lots of other systems that are amazing, wonderful tools. We do not get commissions for endorsing Dropbox. It's just what we use. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about that today. All right. So Dropbox for us is a great tool, because I can go over, and if you see here on the left side of my screen, you see tools, and I'm going to go to sample shared folder, shared files. And I'm just going to give you this as an example. I've used a syncing system, so my Dropbox shows up on my computer. So some people go, oh, but I have to log into an online app every single time. Yes, if you don't sync it with your computer, you will, and you will only have access when you're online, when you're on the internet. Mandy and I found that that doesn't really work for us, so we did the syncing option, which allows us to put it on our laptop, and we can open files even when we don't have internet access. We can edit them, and then it will sync and update the online version when internet access is established, which is really awesome. So it means when we're traveling, when we're in airports, when we're on planes, we can update files or check out things that staff have done, whether it's an organization we're working with or each other, we can check that out. So you see that on the left, you see the different files, the different types of work I do, but you see the folders. So you may have folders, and this is just an example: administration, board governance, key program information. And here I have a few things on Dropbox. But let's just say that we go to board governance and I want to share access. So I've got lots of options. I just right clicked, and you'll see over here I can say give access or remove access, and I can give it to specific people. So this is the tool to grant access or remove access. Very, very important tool for you, because it's very easy to forget who is on these systems, and then board members rotate off and all of a sudden they still have access to these things. You want to make sure that every time there's a rotation, your administrator is going in and updating access information. You have lots and lots of different options here, but you can copy files, you can send them, you can send with a transfer, you can just send it for someone to view the documents. But once again, you have options for can they view them or can they edit them. And as I said, unless you want to give someone authorization to edit, I recommend that you give the view only for people who are just observing or trying to access documents, because you kind of reduce the possibility of someone accidentally deleting things or changing things that you don't want changed. Someone going in and going, ooh, I want to wordsmith this or change this, and that's not the process. In this folder, what I would also do is create a Word document or something that just sits out the folder saying how to effectively use this shared filing system. And it might have your norms or your rules for the board or your staff saying, do not create new file folders unless it adheres to these roles. File folders should be listed with program name, and then it might be program name like opening doors admin, opening doors program info, opening doors finances. You might have a way for files to be saved. You might say it must meet a specific criteria. Anything that you want to put in your norms list. You may say do not edit unless you are authorized to do so. If you are a board member, staff member, volunteer who happens to see something that should be edited, here's your point of contact. So you can have a norms thing, and right here where I have Dropbox shortcut or get started with Dropbox, you can do that. So here you see I have a little printout. It's a PDF, and I can open it straight from here, and it tells me how to keep my files safe, take my things anywhere, and it's a little spreadsheet on how to use Dropbox, how to sign in, log in, create my account, send large files, do all of that stuff. So Dropbox has all the little nifty tools. and you can see them as a PDF and bring them on. So that's the shared filing system, what it looks like on the back end. And as I said, it's extremely helpful. You will see when documents were created, the time, the date, and many times you can even see who did that depending on how many users have been set up in the system. So we're going to jump back over to the PowerPoint. And here we go. If you want help syncing your Dropbox to your desktop or your laptop, there is a link here. We had a virtual assistant help us set some things up when we were new to this, and it took her all of 5 minutes. But like I said, it's great when we're traveling. We can see documents. We can edit documents in real time. So if I'm working on a grant, Mandy can see when did I work on that grant? Was it what is the most recent version? That's going to help you when you're trying to take a day away from the office to say, hey, wait a second, you know, they can access that if they need it. As far as succession planning, this is helpful because if these files are being organized as you go on a day-to-day basis, then the information is already in one space. Staff members are used to the system, how it works. So if I'm saving mine as admin or operating finance as operating admin, and someone else is saving theirs as program admin with the program name, program finances, the systems translate and carry over so that everyone knows how to access. Everyone's using that same filing system, even if they're using it in different programs. So when a board member or a successor comes in and says, oh my goodness, how do I find this? It's not like, oh, where would she have saved that? Or where would he have saved that? It's, oh, this is the way we do things, or here's the norm if you're having troubles figuring out, you know, the system. And then it's easy to explore those as well. So succession planning in general, before I ask you kind of a closing question today, succession planning in general has two components when it comes to sharing information. There's information and then there's knowledge. So information is just the thing, the data, the metrics. And those things are great, they're helpful, they're very necessary, but unless someone knows how to access that information, how to apply it, which is knowledge, then that information is essentially worthless. So having the information in a file sharing system is important, but having people in your organization that know how to access it, use it, and continue to run the organization in your absence is critical. So that there is that bridge that once you have this file sharing system in place, you will have to construct the bridge between information and knowledge. Some of the ways that you can do that is at the beginning of your board meeting, at the beginning of a staff meeting, do a quick tutorial and say, what's new in our file sharing system? Look at these new folders. This is what we've got, an upcoming event. This is where we're saving things. Hey, board members, we've updated all the minutes from prior meetings. We have, you know, our event planning information here. We have to-do lists here. And it's so great. One reason I do like Dropbox compared to some of the other systems is you don't have to have a specific email account like Gmail. Many people have to have a Gmail account or they find it harder to access. Dropbox, you can use, you know, a login information. People can get the username and password and log in, and it's relatively easy to use. You don't have to go into threads and try to find things there. The files are easy to locate and stuff like that. So I would encourage you at the beginning of board meetings to say, hey, this is what's new. This is how to find the information. It's a great place to save your board minutes, your updated bylaws, your archives, event planning, board to-do list, and you can save it in a big folder that says board action plan or board to-do list. And then there's no excuse for board members not being able to find those things. Many times board members will say, oh, but I didn't get that email, or I didn't see that, or I missed the meeting. And you know, that's understandable. It's a busy life, it's a busy world. But if you could make it a little bit easier for those board members by creating a system that then they can access at their convenience and say, ooh, this is great. You might have things like prospects, and the board members can have prospect folder where they say, let me upload ideas for potential funds or potential donors or this and that. And you just have a folder that allows them to edit and add and create and share information in that one folder. To brainstorm ideas. So maybe they're thinking about something they want to brainstorm. Instead of sending an email out, they might put it on a brainstorm page in a board kind of prospecting folder or something like that. So remember, file sharing is an amazing tool to help preserve your organization's information, your legacy, and prepare for a successor. And as I mentioned, I'm recording this right now in the middle of the COVID-19 situation, and we have a lot of executive directors reaching out. They're not in the office. We have staff members who are sick or are showing symptoms and they're unable to come in. So we're not just talking about firing and hiring situations. You know, we're talking about health situations. We're talking about being able to take some time off from the office for some much needed mental health, a break day or a vacation. This file sharing system is for all things, to allow you to function effectively, but also have things in place for a transition. So what file sharing systems do you love? Please share that with us. You can always find us on Funding for Good's Facebook page. Facebook is just under Funding for Good. And we love to answer your questions. We love to see the tools you're using. You know, we all learn this stuff together, and hopefully today's brief presentation was helpful for you. Let me know if it was. If it wasn't, what else you would like to see. And, you know, hopefully you will join us again for another conversation and allow us to help you grow your organization for good.